Hey guys, it's James Dainard and I am back on BiggerPockets YouTube channel, and today we're talking about punching out your investment property. Whether it's a fix and flip property, a BRRRR, or even your development site, it is so fundamentally important that you're delivering the right product to the consumer. Only problem, I bought it from a fake seller.
James Dainard just walked over to my desk.
If you skip the first 3 steps, that's the easiest way to lose money. We've been working on this project for over 6 months. We bought this home, it was dilapidated, it had a ton of deferred maintenance, lots of different issues going on with it, and we've systematically renovated the home by updating it, the bathrooms, the kitchens, the paint, and we spent over $130,000 on this project, and we're about ready to get it ready for sale on market. But the last thing we want to do is affect that sale by having sloppy work. So punching out your investment can dictate all sorts of different things. It's gonna tell you how long your property could stay on market, and also whether that buyer is gonna fall in love with it and bid it to that high price. A lot of times, as investors are getting higher and higher dollars on the property, it's because they did a good job making sure it's totally punched out to where the end buyer came in and they just fell in love and they weren't concerned at all. The least amount of concerns, the higher the price that will typically drive up. Today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about what we're doing with this project over the next couple days. We bought this property 6 months ago and we're about ready to list it in 2 days. So we want to make sure that everything is completed. So the first thing that we always do when punching out a property is we hire a pre-inspection. So we've hired a general contractor to work on this project. They're a licensed and bonded individual, but that doesn't mean that they're going to do perfect work. So once we complete any type of project, we always order a pre-inspection. The typical cost on this costs us about $500. What this pre-inspector is going to end up doing is taking us through and notating anything that's not working or working incorrectly, so our guys can fix it before we put it on market. We're also able to provide this to the buyers so they can make a quick decision. So what we always do is we have this pre-inspection done and then we list it out on what we want completed or not completed. We deliver it to the general contractor and then we verify it. The next thing that we always do is we bring our blue tape. And we're gonna walk through the project and look at the actual deficiencies of the quality work. Many times a pre-inspection is not gonna notate things like quality of paint. For example, right now I'm at this flip property. We paid about $8,000 to paint this house in and out. And I'm seeing that I can see waves throughout the whole property. I'm seeing brake lines throughout the whole thing. Or on the App Store, there's tons of different types of programs that you can download that can help you document that. So as we go through and we're marking our blue tape, we're taking the next step and also taking pictures and notes for the contractor on who does what in the project. During construction, there's all sorts of different things going on. It's always a last minute scramble. People are trying to get things done, not get things done. It's a fire drill to get it on market. Communication is key in any of these projects, and so we like to not only just notate with the blue tape, but we also like to notate with pictures and a description of work of what we expect them to do. For example, things like this that are not that great for finish work. You know, as we come in, we have an old fireplace box here. You can see it just dates the whole home. The floors are new, the paint's new, the fixtures are new, but this makes it look old. We're gonna have them rattle can and paint this inside black. Things that we always wanna look for is like quality of paint. So right here, I'm looking at that this has bubbling going on. A lot of times a pre-inspector isn't gonna call this out. They're gonna go call like, hey, is the hot water tank working? What's the age of the furnace? Is the roof in good working shape? But they're not gonna call out workmanship a lot of times. This here would tell me as a buyer, like if we don't fix this or we don't go through these fine details, it's gonna make them nervous. If I was a buyer and I walk through a house and I'm seeing bubbling paint and kind of overspray throughout, if they can't get the paint right, it's also gonna make me very concerned about what on the mechanicals that they may replace, because paint's a very simple line item, and if they can't get that right, they might have other issues like, the plumbing could be in worse shape. So as we're kind of going through these things, we're notating little things that still need to be completed. Right here, this is something that's already on our work order, but a post got taken out and the hardwoods haven't been patched through. That has to be done before we get on market. Other things that I'm looking for is just cleanliness issues. Again, when buyers are coming through, you want to make them feel like you really put time and effort into the project. This is overspray on the window. Even though it really doesn't affect the value of the house, it's not going to affect the livability of the house, it affects the perception of what the buyer thinks of you as a seller. if they go, well, these guys spent all this money on this house, but they won't even clean their windows, what does that say about you? So the house is actually telling a story about you as a seller as well. So don't forget these little items. Paint overspray, we're seeing it on the door handles, we're seeing it on the windows. All these things need to be cleaned up. Another thing that I'm always doing, you know, we have our pre-inspection report checking them, but I'm also checking what's working and not working, right? We have cold water. Do we have hot water? So right here, this is a pretty key important thing. The hot water is obviously not turned on right now. So like as a buyer comes through, if we list it and there's 6 buyers that come through that first day and the property is really hot and maybe they want to bring their own pre-inspector through, they're going to get through this kitchen, they're going to see the paint flaws, they're going to see the datedness, they're going to see the water's not working right. It's going to make them feel uneasy and they might move on to the next project. That first weekend is so key for you to sell that property. The people rushing out to your house are your hottest buyers. They're the ones most aggressively looking, so you want to make sure this stuff's all done. So right here, hot water's not working, that goes on our punch list so we can have it checked out. Another thing I'm noticing right here, the dishwasher, I open it up, it's not bolted in. It's also not set up all the way, so it's not even turned on. Yes, it's brand new, it's shiny. If you walk through the kitchen, it's gonna look great, but it's not set up right. The more things you leave undone, the more people are just gonna move on to the next property. Every time we sell a property, we are staging it. We wanna feel like people can move in right away. When you have unfinished things in the fridges or pieces of plastic throughout, it makes it feel like it's just been rushed through, and again, it gives a bad vibe. You only want good vibes in your house. As we go through, I'm always notating what kind of paint flaws we're going. Right here, I'm seeing a texture issue going through. Again, this doesn't affect the value of the house, but it affects the perception, and perception's everything. So as we get in, this is actually where we did a lot of different renovation work, and the more scope of work that we do in a specific area, I'm always gonna slow myself down. So what we did in this specific house is we took 2 bedrooms and we combined them into one big in-suite to get the highest and best use out of the value. But that also means the most amount of work went into this situation. So as I'm looking at things, I wanna make sure that this feels really good. This is also the master bedroom, and so because it's a very important room, what they say is master bedrooms and kitchens sell houses. You wanna make sure you spend the time in the house to make sure everything's punched out. So I'm checking everything, like right here. One thing, always check your racking. Make sure it's not gonna fall right off the walls. That's another thing where contractors kind of blow through. And you guys, contractors aren't bad people. They're not doing this on purpose. They're guys that are hiring different workers, and they have different subcontractors themselves, and they're all trying to check each other. Mistakes happen all the time. It's a team effort to make sure it's completed correctly. So as I'm going through, good news is the light fixtures are working correctly. And then I'm checking things like different handles. I got some paint overspray on this here. This, I'm checking to see the toilet paper holder is not quite secured right. And again, we're flushing all the toilets. When you go through these homes, it's really important that you spend the time walking them through, making sure that they're perfected. Bring your camera, take photos of what needs to be done, document it, put it in a punch list app or a clean document that everybody can work with. Write what needs to be completed and who needs to be done with. Things that we're always doing during our punch list is checking on them daily. So we meet our team on site, explain it to them, make sure that they're getting them done, and then follow through and check. You don't want to make just one punch list, give it to the contractor, and then let them run with it and not verify. As an investor, it is your job to verify your asset. You don't want these things rushed out. Again, so we paid for this property 6 months ago. We've been working on it for 6 months. We've been dealing with delays in scheduling, shortages on supply chain, different types of fires. We had one issue with our neighbor that kind of ran through our yard at one point, and we had a little bit of a dispute there. This is not an easy job, so to rush through and list your property rapidly is only going to be detrimental. Remember, there's key things that you always want to do as a flipper, even when you do your next BRRRR property and rent it to your next tenant. You want to make sure that you walk through all the fine details. Part of it on a BRRRR property is you want to do all these punch list items so you don't get a bunch of phone calls later after your tenant moves in, where you got to bring in more maintenance people to fix all these things. The more you have to bring people out to your site, the more money it's going to cost. So some simple tips for punching out your house is always bring your blue tape. Make sure that people can see where the marks are. Download an easy app or something that you can put into a simple format to where people can see what the issue is and then document it accordingly. Always have your property pre-inspected prior to selling or renting, so then you have a list prior to you even doing your punch list on what is going to be on the radar. The pre-inspection is going to do more than just the visuals of paint flaws or quality workmanships. They're going to tell you the mechanical issues. Mechanical issues are what are deal killers. If people think you did your electrical wrong, they're probably going to walk away. The mechanical inspections are also going to be money savers when you do your BRRRR property, because they're making sure that the core mechanics work correctly so your tenant's not blowing you up on the phone. One thing that I always suggest is make sure when you walk through to do your punch list that all the lights are working and on. The more light you have, the more brighter it is, the more flaws you can see. In addition, always bring your general contractor to the job site when you're walking it through it. A lot of times, if the general thinks that you're over punching it out, they kind of start to ignore it. I've had on certain houses me blue tape the whole thing and I'll come back out and I noticed that their workers just pulled the blue tape off the wall and they didn't even fix it. So by bringing the general through and educating them, you're teaching them to prevent future problems down the line, but then you're also agreeing on the scope of work that needs to be completed. Another tip is to always leave your pre-inspection out. I don't care if it's got all sorts of negative flaws or it's really clean. The buyer's gonna know that we've seen these issues and that we've addressed them. It makes them feel good about us as a seller, and it's always gonna get me more money down the road. In addition to, by doing these extra little steps, it helps prevent litigation. Not only did I hire a licensed and bonded contractor, I pulled permits on the property, I had a third-party home inspector also verify it. So if something else happens down the road, it really keeps me in the clear because I really didn't know, or it could be a new issue. So the more documentation, not only does it keep your sale put together, it protects you down the road after your sale. So thanks for tuning into BiggerPockets. I hope you enjoyed this video on how to punch out your next flip or investment property. If you did, click the button below and like and subscribe, or also tune in to us on YouTube at Project RE or on my Instagram at JDaneFlips, and we'll see you again.